A SDSN Portugal é uma rede das Nações Unidas que se chama Sustainable Development Solutions Network. And this network is a network that was created in 2014 by the General Secretary Ban Ki-moon by that time, with Professor Jeffrey Sachs, that is a professor of the Columbia University, and that works with the United Nations. And why? Because we were exactly in the transition of the millennial goals to the SDGs. And it was clear that to achieve the SDGs was not an easy task, and that probably when there are problems of implementation, we need to support the organizations in order that they can really achieve these objectives. And then they had the idea to create this network that has as members the producers of knowledge, academy, research centers, and the mission is to make flow this knowledge to those institutions that need that to solve the problems of the implementation of the SDGs. And this is why this network, that is a world network, has this mission, and the president is Professor Jeffrey Sachs, and there's a leadership council with more than 100 experts of all the world, and I can tell you some names that you will know, like Johannes Rockström, the man of the planet boundaries, Carlos Neves from the Amazon. So it's really the high-ranking experts of all the world that are reunited in this leadership council. And there are 2 meetings each year in which all the questions of the world are discussed. The last one, it was in New York, now in September, and we were also there. So, and the secretariat of the network works in 4 different offices to support all the world networks that exist. And so we have one office in New York, in the Columbia University. We have another one in Paris for Europe, one in Kuala Lumpur for Asia, and one in Kigali for Africa. So it's really covering all the world. The organization of the work is in national networks, so this is a network of networks. I would say that it could not be closer to the 17th ODS, the work in partnership, because it's a network of networks. And in this moment we have around 58 networks in all the world with more than 2,000 members, most of them, as I said, producers of knowledge. And then we have some regional networks, because there are some regions in which some countries, they have not the capacity to have their own network, like for instance, around the Mediterranean. And in that case, there is a network that is the MET, SDSN MET, and SDSN Black Sea, in which all these countries that have not the capacity of having their own network, they are associated in one network. There are several tools that are developed, and the SDG Academy, that is an online academy that anybody can access, and in where there are more than 1,000 courses about sustainability. So here we can see a little bit this, how this is distributed. And as I said, we have several areas of work. For instance, the localization of the SDGs is a very important theme, and also education. Then, in Portugal, we have a baby network, because it will be 1 year old on the 2nd of November. It was approved last year in the Strategic Council of the network in New York. But we have already 25 members, and our mission, like the mission of this network, is exactly to develop innovative models that can help governments, companies, our partners, because our members are the producers of knowledge, but our partners are those that need the knowledge that is produced. So, and this is exactly our vision, to make this knowledge flow and to promote solutions that accelerate the implementation of the SDGs. And on the other side, we also work with the government in Portugal in terms of supporting the decision-making process and helping them to make, for instance, the National Voluntary Report about sustainability and other reports. So, from this mission, this vision to the action, we do several things. And the biggest action we had this year was this big conference that was called Paving the Way to the Pact of the Future, because it was to support the Summit of the Future in September. So this conference was in June. And in this conference we had 750 registrations, 500 online, 240 in room. And for this conference, we have created several groups of work, because, as you know, our common agenda from the General Secretary of the United Nations was based in 11 policy briefs of an expert group that he has created. And we decided to support the Summit of the Future and the Pact of the Future by creating some think tanks about some of these policy briefs that were also important for the policy in Portugal. And the three areas that we have selected was transforming education, that we find that is fundamental. And the second one was the meaningful engagement of youth in the decision-making processes and in the policy-making processes. And finally, something that is very close to my heart, that is to value what counts beyond GDP, because we measure everything with GDP, but we know that this is very, very far away from considering what really counts. But we speak a little bit afterwards. So we participate in several things in the United Nations. We were in the Action Days now and in the Summit of the Future. And we have presented the conclusions of these conferences in several events of the Action Days organized by different agencies of the United Nations, UNESCO, UNEP, and so on. And we have several information tools. Then we were part of a group of Jeffrey Sachs that has made a recommendation for the Pact of the Future. We had in March this year a meeting at the Vatican, because the Pope is also involved in this group for the Pact of the Future. This is a picture in the Vatican. So, and we collaborated also in this. That was then a recommendation. That was the first chapter of the Sustainable Development Report 2024 that was launched in our conference in June in Lisbon. So, and these are some examples of, this is a consortium with 27 different countries, universities, that is related with food, agriculture, biodiversity, land use, and energy. So looking to things on a holistic way, because even the SDGs, they cannot be considered silos. We need to see how they combine together and which transformations we need really to make happen, that they can be implemented, but they have trade-offs, and they have also synergies, and we need to consider that. So, these are the policy briefs that we have considered, and in these policy briefs, what I find that is very important is that when we speak about transforming education, and I am really sorry that we have not more young people here, because I would like to speak to them, because I think that when we see that the young people, they really think differently from me, for instance, that I am from another generation. And they look for other things. They have different ways of expressing themselves. And what are we doing? We are preparing young people for a future with an educational system from the past century. This is the reality. And we want them to be very enthusiastic and to have big marks and really to be, and this is a little bit, let's say, not very clear how this could happen. So this is a team that is very important, and exactly for the same reasons, we are dealing every day with policies that will influence their future. And we take those decisions. So it's completely of justice that they are more involved in those decisions that will affect their future. This is also why it's necessary to involve them more in this. And finally, when I know that we compare the development of the countries on the basis of the GDP, because this is what makes really comparable, but we know that GDP is a metric that comes from the post-war, and that is more related with productivity, and does not consider really other capitals, like the natural capital and social capital. And this is why that, as we know, the trees are one of the main instruments to capture carbon for the decarbonization. But when we cut a forest, the GDP of the country grows. So something is not very correct in this perspective. So we need really to consider some metrics. It's not to give up the GDP, but it needs to be complemented by other metrics that value also the quality of life, the well-being, so the social capital, and also the nature, so the capital of nature. So, in this moment, as we know, all this has led to the signature of the Pact of the Future on the 23rd of September in New York by all the countries of the United Nations. With these 5 chapters that are sustainable development and financing, peace and security, science, technology and innovation, youth and future generations, and transforming the international governance. And it has 2 annexes, that is the Global Digital Pact and the Declaration about Future Generations. I am not going in detail about this, of course, but I decided to put this in this PowerPoint that I promised that I will send also in English, because I thought that it was to be in Portuguese, because I know that this is not very nice to read, and so this is a summary of some of the most important points, because like this you can have an idea. But things that are important is that it was decided the reinforcement of the SDGs, because many countries were afraid that with the Summit of the Future and the Pact of the Future, the SDGs will lose importance. It's not true. It was reinforced, the importance of the SDGs and of the Agenda 2030, and this principle that is very important, not to leave no one behind. So this is also a principle that it was reinforced. And of course, that another point that is very important is the investments and how the private sector can invest also, because we need the 17th goal, that is partnership. And actually, I liked very much to hear here Professor Satya before, when he was reinforcing so much this 17th goal and the partnerships. And I congratulated him, because it's really important to cooperate for this. So it is not only to speak about renewable energies. We need to rethink and to transform the way we think about what we eat, how we build, how we learn. So we need to rethink all these things if we really want to promote the transformations that we need to do. So you have here, in relation to the different chapters of the Pact, and the reinforcement of the participation of young people. And here I would like to say, in relation to the next generations, is that also we need to think that we need long-term planning. We know that we work very much in political cycles, but we need, and this is important for the next generations, we need really to think more on long-term. So, and finally, one important thing that it was very common in New York to be said, that it's a wish that the next Secretary General of the United Nations will be a woman. So, and this is also something that is important. And I would like I know that I am already a little bit over the time, but I would like to say something before, is that, so these are the declarations, but what we know now is that from the evaluation that was done, from all the 169 targets of the Agenda 2030 and of the goals, 16% are on track. So all the other 84%, they are not on track, and some have even went back. And most of them are related exactly with food, with biodiversity, with all these issues that are related with don't leave no one behind. So we need really, and this brings me a little bit to this last point, that is how the global governance is working, because there are some common goods that cannot be on the hand of only 1 or 2 or 5 countries. It needs governance that is really international, that is more multilateral, that we can ensure that what is important is for everybody. So my question is, now we have the Pact signed. The Agenda 2030 was also signed, but this did not prevent this to happen, that it's not on track, that is not being achieved. So what now about the Pact? Which responsibilities? And responsibilities from each one of us. Because each one at its own level, personally, organization, country, region, Europe, UN, all of us have our own responsibilities on this. And so my last word is to say that SDSN Portugal is completely open to work with everybody, and so please look for us, contact us, and we will be very glad to assume our responsibilities and that you join us in making this world a little bit better. Sorry to be a little bit longer. Thank you.